Welcome to Kicking Your Teen's Troubles to the Curb with host Christina Nation, the ultimate guide for parents navigating the challenging yet rewarding journey of raising teenagers. Join your host Christina as she dives deep into the world of adolescence, tackling everything from academic pressures and social dynamics to mental health and independence. So please, welcome the host of Kicking Your Teen's Troubles to the Curb, Christina Nation.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Kick Your Teen's Troubles to the Curb. I'm your host, Christina Nation, and I am so excited today to have the amazing Kim Minch with us. I'm going to introduce her in just a minute, but we're going to talk about emerging adults. So I have been talking about teens, and what about the 18-year-old and the 19-year-old, and how do we best support our teens into the emerging adults and preparing them to be adults in this world, right? That is our parenting job. So let me introduce my good friend and amazing parent coach, Kim Minch. Hello.
Hello.
There she is.
Hi,
Hello.
Christina. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Yes, great. So Kim Minch is a JAI Institute of Parenting certified conscious parenting coach and the founder of Real Life Parent Guide, who specializes in working with parents of emerging adults. Kim knows moms are the emotional barometer in their families, and she is passionate about educating, supporting, and encouraging her clients to parent with intention and guidance rather than fear and control. Kim's 3+ decades of raising 5 now adult children. Yay! And years of coaching other parents empowers her to lead her clients with compassion and without judgment into healthier, happier, and more functional relationships. Kim has self-published her Amazon #1 new release in the parent and adult child relationships category called Becoming Me While Raising You. And I have read it. It is amazing. So you got to grab your copy. It is a mother's journey to herself. She is a sought after and frequent speaker on topics related to conscious parenting for Fox News Radio, television news stations, and podcasts around the globe. Her mission is to spread the movement to parent with rather than over our children. And you can find out more about her mission and services on her website, which will be listed under here. And she currently has 220,000 followers on TikTok and 115,000 on Instagram. You have got to check her out for sure. I love watching her TikTok videos. So welcome, Kim.
I am feeling very blessed to be with you today talking, Christina. I thank you. I love that you have this show. I think it's going to bring so much awareness to people, and I'm happy to contribute what I can today about the topic of parenting emerging adults.
Emerging adults, yes. How do we best prepare? Because that is the goal of parenting, right? Is to best prepare our teens, our kids, then teens, into adulthood. So I am so happy to have you here and talk about this age uh, frame that we're talking about. And I have asked the community some questions that they have for you. So I'm going to be reading from some of those. But first, I just want to hear, a little bit about your journey of becoming a parent coach and why you've decided to work specifically with parenting emerging adults.
Yeah, great question. Thank you so much. Well, my parenting journey began when I was 18 years old, and my oldest was born to a mom who had a very nice upbringing, but ended up being a kind of single parent and had to figure it out on her own because she was asked to leave her family home. So, really, he came into the world with a loving mother, but one that was trying to figure it out at 18. So, I had him and I was with his dad for the first couple of years. And then it was not a great relationship, especially with regard to, abusive in some ways for me. So the two of us split, and shortly thereafter, I met my now husband, and we have 4 children together, the two of us. So, gosh, it's funny because how I got to what I'm doing now is certainly a direct result of parenting 5 very unique individuals. However, especially difficult was parenting my oldest son. Again, I was a kid when I had him, and we kind of grew up together. And while I think I parented a lot the way my parents parented, I also made some changes and needed to make some changes during the teen and emerging adult years that I knew my parents could have done differently or done better. So, regardless, I when my oldest son, when he was about 20 years of age, he became addicted to alcohol as a way to cope with his mental health issues. I didn't know that at the time. Of course, I thought he was just socializing and partying, but then it got to a place where he was drinking by himself, and he was doing so in large quantities and excessive. He got himself into multiple difficult situations. So there was an element of denial initially, but once I really understood that he had a problem, and things kind of escalated pretty quickly from there, it was walking with him through his addiction and mental health challenges into long-term sobriety that brought me inadvertently to this work that I do now. I went back to college. For a long time, I was coaching parents of teenagers. But to be honest with you, what pushed me into parenting emerging adult years, so 18 to slash 25-ish, is I got on TikTok in 2021 and started sharing my story of my own experience. And what kept coming back to me were these parents of young adults, parents who were really struggling with their sons and daughters in this whole transition of what does it look like to parent when they're 18, 19 years of age. They think, I'm 18, I'm an adult, blah, blah, blah. But there's so much brain development that takes place between 18 and the mid 20s. And we know some very unhealthy behaviors can, come about during that time. So I tell myself, or I tell clients actually as well, I am the coach that I needed back in 2008 when my son was walking through his addiction and mental health issues. I have become that coach for other parents at this point as a result of sharing my own story.
Right. And I'm so glad that you are doing the work that you are doing and supporting this age group, because it is a different time, right? Like, a lot of people feel like, oh, they're 18, you're done. But that is not the case, especially today, right? In today's world, our teens are still needing parenting and support. And I don't know that ever stops, right?
True. That oldest son I talked about is now 37, and I still worry about he still has mental health issues, and for sure. And it doesn't matter. He's almost 40, for goodness sake. I'm always going to be worried about him.
Right. And we do have a similar story, because I became a mom at 18 as well.
Okay.
And have 4 children myself, and my oldest is about to turn 29. Wow. But
Okay.
I can completely identify with what you're saying, completely relate to that, still growing up yourself with that first one, and making some shifts, but with each child, each of them is so different. And then we as a parent are so different with each of them, right? As we are growing and changing, that then affects our parenting with each of them as well. And each of our relationship with each of them is different as well. So
Yeah, I work with parents who have multiple young adults, and they'll be like, well, my daughter or my son is thriving. And then, we've got 3 kids out of the house, and this one kid just isn't moving forward. And we don't know. We were the same parents for all of them. And the reality is, no, you're not. I was not the same mother to my son at 18 that I was with my daughter when I was 36. We may have tried to instill the same family values into our kids, but we interact with each one of our kids a little bit differently. And certainly it makes a difference, their temperament and their personality. Each of our kids experiences us differently.
right. Definitely. And I think that's important to point out, that their experience of us, right? Like, we may think that we're this and that, and we're this kind of parent, and we're this, but how they perceive us may be different than how we think we're showing up. Right?
100%.
And then a lot of times that the mental health can color their perceptions as well. So it's, so many things can go into it for sure. But
Yeah.
so that kind of brings us to, as you kind of mentioned earlier, like, what is some of those challenges that you are hearing from parents of emerging adults? You mentioned the failure to launch. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes. Well, I don't love the term failure to launch, although it is something that is common. I mean, people know what you're talking about when you say that. I am in the process of co-writing a book on the topic of this, and we're calling it Lost in Place. So lost. So to sum that up, what that looks like, I have parents every single day that reach out to me about, more often their son than their daughter, but let's just say they're 18 to 25-year-old young person who maybe started college but dropped out, or maybe they took a gap year and never really actually got into college, or they've attempted college several times and it just hasn't worked. They are at home for the most part, and they're nocturnal, meaning they're up all night and sleeping all day. Essentially, they're trying to escape the world. They're living opposite. They're trying to hide from their family. They're trying to hide from the world. They're feeling hopeless. They don't have a direction, and they're overwhelmed. Many parents that I work with have a young person who also has a diagnosis of anxiety, depression, ADHD, borderline personality disorder, on the spectrum. I mean, so there are multiple things going on for these young people. And I would say, I think there's a number of combinations of things that are impacting young people, but a sense, again, of hopelessness, of being afraid to grow up. If I had to sum it up, Lost in Place is a young person who has maybe attempted to move ahead in their lives after high school, but for one reason or another, it hasn't worked out, and they haven't had the grit or resilience like maybe we did when we were young and 18 and pregnant and figuring it out, to get back up. They are pretty much hiding at home.
Yeah, yeah. I too have worked with quite a few parents that are experiencing this, and I often get asked, so I'm going to ask you, what do you think is contributing to this?
I don't want to point to this entirely. I think there's a number of things that are contributing to it. One is the content, the information that's coming in. I think that algorithms are very good at picking up people's sense of hopelessness, and feeding that information, feeding them additional information that makes them think that the world is a bleak place. And let's be honest, there's a lot going on in the world. And so, what you choose to focus on grows. So I think that young people are being inundated with information. It's overwhelming. They're also being fed a lot of negativity, which I think is contributing to their high level of anxiety. They don't know who to trust, what to trust, or what's going to happen in the future. And let's face it, the impact of what 2020 did on young people is there's no shortage of evidence that that has been a contributing factor. Young people struggling with mental health goes back further than 2020, but it certainly was exacerbated by being in lockdown. Okay. So those are a couple of things. Some other things that I think contribute: the economy, just the idea of like how expensive things are. That is absolutely
Right.
having an impact on kids. I don't think they necessarily want to be at home as long as they have to be financially. And I think that is super frustrating to them. I also think that and I think in part this is a Gen X thing. I'm just going to say this. Our parents and previous generations didn't understand that our feelings had value, and they needed to be validated and recognized. And I think as we became parents, I'm making a huge generalization here, but I do want to say, I do think that as Gen X became parents, we realized that we didn't have the emotional support at times that we really needed growing up. And so we've gone too far the other way. And kids' feelings and kids and parents being overly empathetic at times has contributed in part to this. This is not to minimize mental health. This is not to minimize it at all. But I think many parents I talk to, the idea that their son or daughter is depressed or anxious is so scary to them that they're just so afraid to say something or do something or push too hard, that they're creating this and enabling there's a term called depression den, where, the depression den is home that's comfortable. Nobody's really pushing them to get additional mental health help, or, they're just creating an environment where this can continue to fester out of love. Like, I'm not saying parents don't love their kids. I'm saying they're afraid. They're afraid of mental health. And so I think that's where education can be super empowering for parents.
Yeah, that's interesting. I never heard that term before, depression den.
Yeah, I didn't come up with it, but it makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. But so in a sense, I think you're kind of saying a little bit of what I have felt too, that our generation now is kind of, like you said, overcompensating to the other extreme, where we're rescuing and we don't want our child to feel any pain, and so we're trying to fix everything for them, and we're rescuing, and in that sense we're enabling them rather than empowering them, which is causing them not to have that resilience that we did back in our generation. And
Yes.
so that sounds like a little bit about what you're saying, and a lot of it is coming out of fear as well, that we're parenting out of fear.
For sure.
So that's why
100%.
I like in introduction you talked about not parenting out of fear, right?
Yeah.
Well, great. Well, now that we've talked about the why, kind of what's going on behind this, what are some of the strategies that you offer? Like, we want to, best parent our emerging adult. We want to help them succeed and be independent and have the skills that they need. So what are some things that you suggest that we can do to do that, have that?
Well, when I work with parents, first of all, I think one of the biggest problems parents of emerging adults have is a lack of confidence.
Mm.
This is a transitional time in parenting, and they're just not sure how does that look? Like, how, what am I used to have curfews, and I used to have consequences if they didn't follow the rules and stuff like that. And now I have a 22-year-old living at home, or maybe they're at college, and I'm not sure if they make an unhealthy choice or they do something stupid, as young people and all of us are can be, at times do. How do I discipline them? What are the consequences for a 22-year-old? Because we were taught to parent this way, when you have someone who's an emerging adult and they need some kind of consequence, you realize very quickly there's no consequence out there. So you can't ground them. You can't necessarily, I mean, in some cases you need to take away the car if they're driving under the influence, obviously, but there's you don't have the same ability that you maybe did when they were teenagers or young children. So lack of confidence is one of the big things. What does it look like to parent an emerging adult? Like, these are things that we work on and talk about, the shift that needs to take place from certainly talking at them to talking with them, to inviting them into the solution to a problem. Okay, that's collaborative problem solving. So if there's an issue going on at home with a 20 something who's living there, and the parents, and they keep either yelling at or trying to discipline or beating their head against the wall because their 22-year-old continues to do the same behavior that they don't like. Maybe it's not putting the dishes in the sink. What I will suggest to parents is, really sit down with this young person and say, there's a problem. And the problem is, define the problem using an I statement. You don't want to say, you never put your dishes in the sink, because that will immediately bring up the defenses, right? I am doing more work around the house than I want to. How can we work together to solve this problem? And at first, the young person, because you've never given them the option of being part of a solution, will probably say, I don't know. But it takes time and practice for them to understand that, no, you're in a different phase of your life now. And this parent-child relationship is in a different phase, wherein we need to work together to fix whatever the issue is. The more a parent talks at a kid, the more you keep this dynamic. I'm the parent, you're the child. I am suggesting that we come here and work together.
Right. So the first thing I'm hearing is that if our emerging adult is still living with us, then we're still going to be experiencing. It sounds like we're still having boundaries and expectations, and we still need to figure out how to work together. I feel like it's not any different than your spouse. Right?
Well, I was gonna. It kind of is like you shift more into a roommate type situation. Now, the problem comes in when young people aren't working or they're underemployed and they're not paying rent, and this keeps the dynamic like, I'm paying for everything. I'm the parent. This is so when I work with parents, there's really a 4-part process to it. One is to really investigate and identify what are the core issues that are going on here, because parents will come in and they'll tell me all about the circumstances that they're in, and I'll say, okay, what is really going on? Like, I want you to talk to me from your mom gut, your dad gut, like what's actually happening at your house. These are the circumstances, but what's going on beneath the surface? So investigating, what is their son or daughter capable of based on their history? What's going on for them now, day to day? And how can parents, that's the second part of what I do, is help them create a plan to start incrementally in small steps, stepping out so that their young person has to step in and start taking some more responsibility. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
And the
Yeah.
big problem with that is that parents, it's their emotions. Parents' emotions often get in the way, right? Their fear, their expectation, their disappointment, their feeling disrespected, all the things contribute to being able to smoothly shift into more of a, again, a roommate, or like a, pretend it's your nephew living with you, or somebody's, your best friend's son or daughter kind of thing, as opposed to you're so closely tied because it's your kid.
Yeah. Yeah. So those emotions, right? So I think that kind of brings me to the question of like, how do we let go? How do we let go enough that they're able to grow that resilience? We're not so emotionally invested, like freaking out about everything. And let me just stop right there. Like, this to me is a hard time too, because when you're talking about these emotions and you're talking about this age, I'm thinking, I know me, I'm going through menopause. My
Mm.
emotions are all over the place. Okay. So let's just take a minute to talk about menopause and raising emerging adults. It's like me and my daughter, my face is still swollen from crying all night last night because my feelings were hurt.
Mm.
You know? So how does, so when you talk about those emotions, and we know that, at this time of parenting, that we're going through menopause and our emotions are high, and then we're dealing with our emerging adults that may not be experiencing the resiliency and independence that we want. Like, how do we navigate all of that?
Yeah, that's why it's really important to have a good support system for yourself. Not only am I experiencing menopause as you, but I also have an aging mother who is starting along the lines of dementia. And so I heard about this whole sandwich generation thing when I was younger, but I was so busy running around after small children that I wasn't really in tune to what was going on. Well, now this is my life. Not only do I have 5 kids 19 to 37 years of age with all their different paths and whatever, and I'm not actively parenting, but there are things that come up. I know that you know this, like, you're still involved in their lives, and though you're not actively parenting as much as you were, the emotions are still there. You still worry about your kids, you still watch them go up and down because that's the way life is. And on top of that, you're going through your thing, and you might have parents that are aging that you need to be taking care of. So a support system is incredibly important. I do a twice a week parent group for parents of emerging adults, and it is a thriving, non judgmental, beautiful, trusted space where people can come and bring their thoughts. And just knowing that you're sharing with a small group of other people and that they understand is incredible, does incredible things for your ability to go back into the game and handle it, go back into what needs to be done and handle it, because in your sharing with other people, common situations that other people can understand, everybody's holding space for everybody else. So that is an incredibly powerful thing, because a lot of us are holding space for our kids as they are trying to establish themselves as independent adults. So having a good support system. I'm going to throw, and maybe you'll remember this from the last page of my book, but I'm going to throw at you the quote that was downloaded to me that has become really my mantra. And it is very deep. And so I expect that your listeners may have to really think about this, but it's an answer in part to your question about how do we put some space between who we are and who our kids are. Okay? All right. So, and the quote is, our children come through us, not for us, except for the lessons that they reflect to us during their journey in an effort to grow us up along the way. So I will often say this to parents and have them think about it for a minute. And then I will say, what is your son or your daughter trying to teach you as you walk through this with them? And most of the time, they come to that I have no control, that I don't have control. And understanding that while they came through us and we poured into them for so long, they're not ours to predict, they're not ours to run our agenda through.
Right, right. I love that. I do remember that quote, and I love it. And on that, we're going to let our parents ponder on that for a minute while we take a break. We got a sponsor break, and then we'll come back and touch on that a little bit more and what that means. So we'll be right back. I'm Christina Nation, and you're watching Kick Your Teens Troubles to the Curb, or yeah, Teens Troubles to the Curb, and we'll be right back after this short sponsor break.
Mike Zorek, a three-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a six-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2/3, and 2/4. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorek, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorek has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk on the BBM Global Network.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Welcome back to Kick Your Teens Troubles to the Curb. And with me is Kim Minch as we are discussing how to successfully launch our teens into adulthood and emerging adults and all of the things that goes in with that. And we just left off at the great quote that Kim brought up. Can you just repeat that one more time,
Sure.
Kim? I love it so much.
Yes. Our children come through us, not for us, except for the lessons they reflect to us during their journey in an effort to grow us up along the way. So it goes to the saying that our children are our greatest teachers. And while we pour into them and we teach them many things during their life, whether it's a skill or a character trait or values that we're trying to instill in them, we pour into them But along the line, I know that some of the greatest lessons I've ever learned about myself and about life in general have come through my kids.
Right, right. And it's just all a journey, right? Like we talked about, being young parents and raising our young kids, and then we're raising them through the teen years, and then young adults, and then we're going through menopause, and then we're taking care of our adults, and along the whole way, we are learning and growing as they are learning and growing, and we're all just trying to do the best that we can and learn from each other and help each other in the next phase of our life.
Yeah. And parents do struggle with taking things very personally. They do. And I know, and I would have to go into the story, but I know how I came to a place of being able to distance myself from my kids and who they are as not being a direct reflection of who I am. But every parent, that's a journey for themselves. Like I know how I got there, but I don't think that I tell parents my story, but that doesn't necessarily always translate. But it's so much better for the parent if they can put some space between who I am and I raised this child with who this child is becoming.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that is so important. So important for sure. All right. Do have a few questions that the community has asked. I think we kind of went over this one. Can you discuss the role of failure in growth process for emerging adults and how? So we went over that one. What advice do you have for parents dealing with differing values or life choices compared to those of their emerging adults?
Hmm. Can I share a personal story? Because I think it will illustrate this. Okay.
Yes, please.
Okay, and I'm hoping that it will be an okay example here. All right, so I have 5 adult children, and my second son is just soon to be an ordained priest. In spring of this year, he'll be ordained, and we raised our kids in the Catholic faith, and I'd say it was inconsistently we did that. Okay, so my son is. I say he's gotten all of the Catholic in the family because none of our other kids practice, and we're not necessarily practicing the faith at this point. But the reason I'm telling you this is because he has chosen the one career path where he will never be able to marry and have children. And all the while growing up, I thought he would really make a wonderful husband and father. Like he just has this wonderful way about him. And so when he chose to go into this, and it's been a long commitment, and it's not something that happens overnight. Parents like grieving the idea of what you thought your kids were going to be and do, and what their values are. We now are no longer practicing, but he is very vested in this, and I can tell 100% this is what he is meant to do. So I guess what I'd say to parents is, if your son or daughter are making lifestyle choices or have different values than you, it's one thing if they're self-destructive, and they're on a path where you need to step in and you need to help out. And it's another to allow your kids to be who they're meant to become. And as long as you can have, here's what is beautiful about our kids and our family is that while my son is very steeped in this, he doesn't push it on us, and we don't, we respect each other for where we're coming from. So if you can have if you can have discussions and get to a place of, while you may not agree on the lifestyle this person has chosen, one of your kids has chosen, or a value or a belief that they have, that you can still have mutually respectful conversations about it. That's, to me, that's the ultimate, because within our little family of 7, there are such a variety of beliefs and values and things that these now adult children are living out. But we can discuss it with mutual respect, and we can disagree in a respectful way. And my gosh, I think that's probably, not that I want to use the word pride in motherhood, but it's probably one of the things that I find that I'm most proud of my kids for, is that they're so vastly different, and yet they love each other for who each one of them is, and they don't try and push their agendas on anyone.
Yes, I love that. That's such a beautiful example, because I think you pointed out that, sometimes we have expectations for our children, and they may take a different path than we have, thought. And how do we, flow with that, and let go of what we thought and embrace what they've chosen. And that's such a
And
beautiful
it is a grieving process. I want to say that I want to acknowledge that it is a process to which, it didn't happen over, like, I was genuinely sad that he was making this choice. But fortunately, over time, and in seeing him and how much he loves clearly what he's doing, it's easy to, if you see your son or daughter and maybe they're living a different path than you envisioned for them, but they are thriving in it, how can you not, ultimately at the end of the day, we say as parents, we just want our children to be happy, which we know can't always take place. But if they're living a life that is fulfilling for them, how do we not get behind that?
Yeah. 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 I think even my eldest is going to be 29, and I'm like, I've always seen him to be a father. And I'm like, I was a mom at 18. You're 29. What's going on? But it's different nowadays.
It is.
They are waiting a lot longer, and they're making different choices. And so just accepting that and trusting the process, and knowing that they know what's best for them, and when the time is right for them, and if
For
it's
sure.
not, then
Right. I mean, you know how much growing up it took at 18 to become a parent. You can't prepare for that fully, but we certainly want our children, when they're ready for that step, to be as ready as they possibly can be mentally, and to be choosing that, as opposed to feeling pressured into something that because parenthood is way too big a commitment for somebody to just lightly step into.
Right, definitely. All right. So, how can parents help their children, emerging adults, develop the essential life skills that they will need in this time? So, how can we, help them develop those skills that they are going to need when they are, launched into adulthood?
Yeah, well, it's about incrementally stepping back and allowing them to try things, to make mistakes, to learn from those mistakes. What I see now is often parents do too much for their young people. They either they don't want to see them fail, or they can do it better, faster, quicker, or their kid is depressed and they won't do it, so they step in and do it. But for all of these reasons, parents are not they're risk averse. I think in some cases they want to make sure that this kid like has this, I don't know, this perfect experience and doesn't have these hardships along the way. And the reality is, if I look back at my own 20s, and maybe you would say the same thing, it's in those difficult times that we built resilience, right? We built grit. We built the character traits that we need.
Yeah.
So when
I definitely see.
Yeah, when parents are parents need to learn to, it's not that you can't show your kid how to do their laundry, right? But don't do it for them. Like stop doing things for them they can and should be doing for themselves. And parents will argue that if I don't do it, they won't do it. Okay, well, unless it's a life or death situation, just take a step out. And whatever the natural consequences are, maybe that's what they need to experience in order to learn the lesson and to move forward.
Right. Such an important point. And on that note, we're going to take a short break. So I'm Christina Nation, and this is Kick Your Teens Troubles to the Curb, and we'll be right back after this sponsor break.
Dr. RC will share extraordinary resources and services that promote educational success, as well as making a difference in the lives of all social workers, as well as the lives of children, adolescents, and teens of today. She will have open discussions addressing many of the issues that we face about our youth and how being employed in the uniquely skilled profession of social work for over 18 years has taught invaluable lessons through her personal experiences. She will also provide real-life facts, examples, and personal stories that will confirm that why serving as a child advocate is extremely beneficial when addressing the needs of the whole child. Listen live to Dare to Soar, Saturdays, 10 a.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network, and tune in radio as Dr. RC will provide thought-provoking information that will empower, encourage, and strengthen students, families, and communities across our nation. You can also visit her at soarwithkatie.com. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
All right, welcome back to Kick Your Teens Troubles to the Curb. I'm your host, Christina Nation, and with me today is Kim Minch, and we've been talking about how to launch our teens into young adulthood and how to navigate that time in our lives. So thank you for being here. All right, so I think you made an important point about how we, need to teach our youth the skills that they need and not rescue them from all the hard stuff, because through the hard stuff is how they work that resilience muscle, is how they do learn and become stronger and able to navigate life. And I totally see that in my daughter's experience where, as we're talking about mental health, my daughter struggled with depression in her teens. And, working through that and building the skills that she needed to manage her depression, she came out the other side a much stronger, more resilient young adult because of, growing those skills through that experience. And so, what are some ways that we can, besides not rescuing them, and how do we balance, supporting them
Mhm.
without completely fixing everything for them during their struggles? When we do have a young adult still at home and they are struggling with their mental health or possibly addiction or just not having the independent skills that we think that they should have at that age, how do we best support them without doing too much?
Yeah, I think well, and I want to organize my thoughts here, but first, really doing a self inventory as a parent as to what you are doing for them that you know in your intuition you need to step back and not do, or teach them if it's something that they haven't learned and it's something that they need to learn, then to teach them, to be able to teach them that, and then watch them practice it, right? Because some skills may take a couple of times to practice it. And then also asking, so parents doing a self inventory, what am I doing or not doing that might be contributing to this young person who's stuck? I call it like they get stuck. So that is part of it. The second part of it is, what is my work to do? My work as a parent is to work on my emotional state. Parents tend to rush in, rescue, fix because they're so uncomfortable in their own emotions. They're anxious, they're scared, they're worried that they have failed as a parent in some way, that they, so that's your work to do as a parent, is to do an inventory on where you might be doing too much. And if you can't do that objectively, have someone do it with you. Because that's part of what I do with parents, is really, go through an inventory of what they're doing, not doing, what they've tried in the past, that kind of thing. And then often I will say to parents, is that your work to do, or is that your son's work to do? But your work to do in this situation is to reconcile and work on your feelings of fear so that you're not projecting them into the situation and onto your son, quite frankly.
Right. Right. So, like every other stage of parenting that we talk about, it starts with us, right? And looking
100%.
at our work. So, we're still learning and growing through this process as well. And so, we need to look at ourselves and where do we need to continue to grow, and how do we then help them do the same?
And let me summarize that by saying, I tell parents all the time, the reason that it is so hard to watch our young people go through something difficult and to grow is because it's an opportunity for you to grow too. This is
Mhm.
a growing experience for you as well. And it's painful to grow. So
Mhm.
that's the reason it's hard to watch our young people go through something difficult, because it causes us to realize how little control we have, that we can at best emotionally support, tell them we believe in them, get them the help, or lead them to, a network of 3 therapists in our network. Like, you can lead them to things, but you cannot do the work for them.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Well, I think that is a great place to end our discussion. And I just want to thank you so much for being here and ask, how can my followers find you and learn more about your work?
Yes. Well, my website is reallifeparentguide.com. And if your audience is on TikTok or Instagram, I'm at Kim Minch, MUENCH, parent coach on both platforms.
Yes, wonderful. You definitely have to check her out on TikTok and Instagram. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being here. And I just want to let you all know to also follow me at my website and social media, empoweredparenting.family. And if you haven't got a copy of my book yet, it is The Power of Everyday Grace, Parenting Teens with Depression. It's available on Amazon. So pick up your copy and make sure to tune in live next week at 8 a.m. Pacific time. And any questions, feel free to, leave a comment. If you're watching the replay, subscribe, leave a comment, leave your questions, and I will make sure to answer them. So thank you so much for tuning in to Kick Your Teens Troubles to the Curb, streaming on Bold Brave TV. Thank you.
This has been Kicking Your Teens Troubles to the Curb with host Christina Nation. Tune in each week as Christina features expert interviews, real-life stories, and practical strategies that empower parents to connect with their teens and effectively address their struggles. Here, Tuesdays, 11 a.m. Eastern, on the Bold Brave TV network, powered by B2 Studios.